Hi, and welcome again to another episode of It Matters. It's October. It's that time again for National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. You know, this is like a federally mandated thing. President Obama actually mandated that October will be Cybersecurity Awareness Month.
I did not know that.
It's a pretty important topic, and I think that, you know, a lot of people don't understand what cybersecurity really means or what it is. So I think a good topic for today is to sort of talk a little bit about that. So Jonathan, tell them all about
it. Well, it's a broad-ranging topic, so I think you can come down to the fundamentals of cybersecurity, which are all about people, process, technology, and it's underpinned by the culture of the organization.
So I think out of those three things, you know, they kind of embody what makes up a business. But I think the key thing there is culture, like you said, because you can create rules and follow rules, and you could buy products. But if you don't have the proper culture in place where it's sort of second nature to follow these sort of practices, then it's doomed for failure.
Right. I think, and that's what I think Cybersecurity Awareness Month really goes at. It's not just making the cyber IT professional aware, but it's really making everyone in the organization aware of their role and responsibility for good cybersecurity practices.
So I think a lot of times in IT, we think about cybersecurity and we instantly think about technology products, right? What are we going to buy to solve our cybersecurity problem? Because we all want the magic button we press and all our fears or problems go away.
Right.
But is that really a reasonable or logical approach? Or?
Not at all. And it comes down to all of the things, because you're only as strong as the weakest link in the chain. And so, you know, you're going to, if you're an adversary, you're going to target the easiest access point. So that could just be stealing someone's credentials, or if you make it difficult by having the right processes and choosing the right people, it's going to be difficult for people to gain access to that. So you have to look across the organization to figure out, how am I going to make my entire enterprise secure from a cybersecurity adversary? And so it's getting everyone to understand why they need to not avoid the process, why they need to use the process, and making the processes work for the organization so that you can still do business. It's not hindering you from being successful, but it's protecting your data and your enterprise adequately based on the risk.
Right. So there's been a lot of breaches in the news lately. It seems like every other week. And we've talked about this topic before. You know, in those instances, is it always a case of, because some of those organizations, we know organizations like them we've dealt with before, they do have rules and process.
Right.
So how do organizations like those end up getting breached? You know, do they not do it to the, you know, deep enough level, or are they missing the culture piece? Is it more, these are the rules you have to follow, but people aren't really following them as sort of second nature, you know?
Yeah, I mean, every situation is different, but I actually think that a lot of times, you know, a lot of the stuff that you see in the news is usually not some really technical, amazing feat that somebody exploited some vulnerability nobody knew about. It tends to be a social engineering case, and even back to the days of Kevin Mitnick, it's usually a social engineering use case. So it's making sure that you've thought about everything ahead of time. You really understand where your data is, and you are adequately choosing what you want to put the most stringent protections around, and not worrying about everything equally. So that goes into what we call data classification. You want to really classify how critical is this data and how sensitive it is, and not try to treat everything equally, because you're doomed to fail, and you want to make sure the most critical set of information is more protected than the least critical or public information.
So, you know, you talked about two things there, right? So the people being key, and the second part is process, right? There's got to be a process in place to be able to actually classify that data.
Right.
There has to be a mechanism in place for people to understand what classification certain data is. Now, easy examples are social security numbers or some sort of personally identifiable information. And so you can look at a number and say that looks like a social security number, but I think more importantly, that document needs to have some sort of unified classification mechanism to say, like, this document is protected and this is to the level it's protected with, so that everybody in the organization understands that they need to treat that data to the protection level that data needs to be treated with.
Right. Yeah, a lot of it comes down to the process. These things can be done manually, and then you can then start to make things easier and accelerate it with technology as the enabler.
So, okay, last thing is technology. There are a lot of tools out there. There are tons of tools, right? And obviously, it's putting those tools together in the right way. So, from a technology perspective, easy ones are obviously we have to have firewalls. We have to have logging mechanisms. What are some of the other, how do we go deeper than that? What do we look at, in terms of being able to, there's so many different facets, right? There's protecting attacks, reacting to attacks. There's, dealing with the data and the classification, and can data be moved? And it's really pretty expansive number of things. And like I said, this is not an easy button type of scenario.
Right.
What may be some of the other technology things people could do or do to sort of solve, some of these?
People think about firewalls because they think about just putting a big wall around everything and keeping the safe stuff inside and the dangerous stuff outside. But, with today's environment, that's not a reality and that's not sufficient. So what has to happen is you need to manage where the data is and look at the data and who's accessing that data. And it comes down to a series of tools, a series of processes, and not exposing everything about your architecture to everybody. So, people like to talk about how they do things, but you need to keep that secret as well. Secrecy becomes a key part of that architecture and strategy. And then in addition to that, you need to have people that have done it before, because if you just try to meander and find your way through it, you're going to keep making mistakes before you learn what to do. So by calling in people that have expertise in protecting large enterprises, your chances of success out of the gate are a lot higher.
So you can't read a book and become a cybersecurity expert.
No, I think, and there's probably not one person that you can rely on that can just give you the answers to everything either. So
experience. There's really no substitute for experience in this case. So again, people, process, technology, binding all those three together into a culture is really what makes cybersecurity effective for your organization. Keeping with the theme of secrecy, we're not going to give away any more secrets. But if you want to find out more information about how to protect your organization and how to protect your data, go to the website at www.racktopsystems.com, or better yet, call us and have a sit-down, in-person conversation and talk about some of the things we talked about today at a little bit more depth. But we'll still keep the secret.
That's right.
For It Matters, I'm Eric.
And I'm Jonathan.
Till next time.